video is about critical thinking. In this video, we add to our understanding of critical thinking and critical analysis. By the end of this video, you should have a good sense of what it means to be a critical thinker. In addition, we will look at how to write about your ideas and distinguish your ideas from those you encounter in your research. Becoming a critical thinker is important. To develop this skill, you need to ask lots of questions. Ask questions about the different types of knowledge. What is the difference between authoritarian knowledge and experiential knowledge? Do you consider any superstitions to be true? Using a critical perspective, ask yourself, what factual basis exists for these superstitions? When you select an article from a recognized publication, either an academic peer-reviewed journal or a piece from a major newspaper or a news magazine, review it from a critical thinking perspective. Are the sources documented? Are methods transparent and replicable? What is your reaction to the writing? Also, consider what authorities are recognized in your field of study. Different fields will place more or less value on different experts. If you are writing an education essay about curriculum and pedagogy, do you turn to an expert in teaching and learning, or do you use research by a criminal psychologist? Well, in some cases there may be overlap, such as curriculum suited for young people convicted of violent crimes. For the most part, you will use experts in the field of research you are conducting. You should also consider how culturally obtained knowledge shapes your belief system. In other words, how does your cultural background shape the way you view the world? All in all, you want to make critical thinking a habit, something you do almost without thinking about it. To develop these critical thinking skills, you want to evaluate your information from many different perspectives, which means asking questions about methodology, expertise, and so on. You will want to become an active learner, which means asking questions to clarify information, especially when you're uncertain about some aspect of it. You will need to recognize both your own assumptions and other people's. You also need to be open-minded when you encounter new information. Don't automatically think something like, we don't believe in that in my culture or religion. Ask yourself, why don't you believe it? And is there anything I can learn from this new information? In other words, don't jump to conclusions without asking lots of questions. Now, this term critical thinking is regularly used at university. Indeed, you are studying at university rather than somewhere else in large part to develop these critical thinking skills. If you do develop strong critical thinking skills, you will be able to apply those skills in every situation you encounter, which will help you succeed in your future careers. This is often called transferable skills. Let's start by thinking about what critical analysis means. When you engage in critical analysis, you break down an idea or a statement or a concept, and then you subject it to critical thinking in order to evaluate its validity. In an essay, for example, you assess a line of reasoning, testing each piece of the reasoning claim, like testing the links in a chain. As you test each link, you also test for consistency and coherence. Is everything hanging together? Does it all make sense together? In most research essays, however, you must follow the breaking down of ideas with synthesis. Synthesis is when you put things together. In scientific writing, the discussion section that follows the results section is where you make connections between results and the hypothesis, as well as the results of similar studies. The discussion section is where the synthesis occurs. In humanities and social science essays, the pattern is different. In these types of essays, there are usually no distinct sections of results, findings, followed by discussion, although in some cases there are. However, analysis and synthesis are often part of the evolving structure of the essay. The emphasis on analysis may be heavier in the earlier sections of the essay and on synthesis in the later sections, but the two are often more smoothly integrated into a more cohesive narrative, rather than broken down into distinct sections. Now, if you look up the term critical, you will find it has many different meanings. On this slide are a number of different definitions, but these do not fit our usage of the term. You can see a lot of them are related to science. We are more interested in a couple of other usages. The first definition is the one that many students think of when they hear the word critical. They will often interpret it in the sense of criticizing severely or unfavorably. This is not what I mean when I'm talking about critical analysis and critical thinking. Rather, I'm referring to the third definition, C, on the slide. Exercising or involving careful judgment or judicious evaluation, critical thinking. You may also come across definitions B and D in academic research. B, consisting of or involving criticism, as in critical writings. Also of or relating to the judgment of critics. So when you read critiques of plays or movies, as in the play was a critical success. And D, including variant readings and scholarly emendations. In other words, a critical edition of something like a Shakespearean play where a scholar analyzes it and provides different readings of the play. So there's different interpretations. However, we are concerned here with definition C because critical thinking and analysis is about evaluation and judgment. When you use your critical thinking skills, you are analyzing and synthesizing information, ideas, and concepts. Through this judicious evaluation, you come to conclusions about what you have read or learned. Finally, here is another definition of critical thinking that best fits what is usually meant in university studies. Critical thinking is the disciplined mental activity of evaluating arguments or propositions and making judgments that can guide the development of beliefs and taking action. Some of the terms that are used in connection with critical thinking are critiquing, analyzing, disciplined thinking, evaluating, applying, synthesizing, processing, and so on.